halfway to December. Dublin, Ireland, 2013. The wind off the River Liffey always carried a bite in November. Sharp and sobering, Maeve stood under the flickering lamplight outside Doyle's pub, clutching her coat tighter. The city was humming, but her world had narrowed to the sidewalk, the cigarette in her hand, and the sound of the violinist playing across the street. That's when he appeared, all untamed curls and two bright eyes, humming along like he'd been waiting for the music to lead him to her. His name was Aidan. He said it like a secret. He had that kind of smile, crooked, slow to build, like he wasn't sure he deserved joy but was willing to try anyway. He noticed the way she flinched when someone touched her arm, the way her gaze flicked away too fast. She noticed how he talked in circles, like his thoughts were running ahead of his breath. They didn't ask too many questions at first. Aidan was a writer, though he hadn't written in months. His flat was cluttered with notebooks full of half-formed poems and crumpled letters he never sent. He spoke of the world like it was too loud and too beautiful all at once. Maeve understood she was still recovering from a breakdown 2 years ago, a cocktail of depression and PTSD that left her unable to leave her flat for weeks. The meds helped, but they dulled things. She missed feeling real. Together they felt real. They fell in love over black coffee and late-night walks through Temple Bar. Hands brushing, never quite laced, Aidan would read aloud under her duvet, voice low and certain, even on days when he couldn't meet her eyes. She began painting again. First small sketches, then sweeping canvases of their nights. His profile lit by candlelight, the rain on their window like Morse code, but no one warned them how heavy healing could be. Some mornings, Aidan wouldn't get out of bed. Other days he'd disappear for hours, manic energy propelling him across the city, returning with wild eyes and new scars. Maeve begged him to see someone. He said the doctors made it worse. They want to flatten me, he whispered once. But you let me stay messy. By early December, Maeve could feel him unraveling. He stopped calling her by her name, stopped sleeping. The night he climbed onto the roof of his building, rambling about constellations and second chances, she called emergency services. He never forgave her for that. They gave him a diagnosis, schizoaffective disorder. The hospital kept him for 2 weeks. She visited every day, even when he stared through her like a ghost. On the last day, he handed her a folded page from his journal. Just one sentence. I don't want to be a burden in your story. He left Dublin the next morning, no goodbye, just gone. Maeve didn't paint for a year. She tried to forget, but grief is a stubborn house guest. It lingers in the smell of his old scarf and the note tape behind her bedroom mirror. Now, years later, she tells the story in whispers through oil and canvas. Her gallery is tucked between a flower shop and a record store. The centerpiece is a painting of a boy on a rooftop, stars blooming from his chest. Sometimes a young woman walks in and pauses before it, hand to heart, eyes wet with recognition. Maeve doesn't ask their stories. She only says, he was brilliant and broken and loved. Because sometimes that's all we get, and sometimes it's enough.
Montreal, Quebec, 2016. The snow arrived early that year, draping the city in quiet. Everything felt muffled, like the world had pressed pause. Claire lived alone on Rue Saint-Denis in a fourth-floor walk-up where the heater rattled like a nervous heartbeat. She liked it that way. Routine, predictable, safe. The city pulsed below her, but she watched from the window, coffee in hand, always from a distance. Then Julian moved in next door. He was impossible to ignore, tall, wild curls and a laugh that broke through walls. A composer, he said, though he hadn't written anything since spring. He was charming but scattered, like someone constantly trying to catch his own thoughts. He'd knock on her door just to borrow sugar, or ask if she believed music could heal people. Claire never answered him fully. Not then. She hadn't touched her violin in 3 years, not since the diagnosis: social anxiety, panic disorder, chronic depersonalization, labels that felt like shackles. Once a concert soloist, now she couldn't ride the metro without trembling. Music used to be her voice, then the silence came. Julian, it turned out, knew silence well. His apartment was full of melodies he couldn't finish. He lived with cyclothymia, his moods swinging gently, but often like tides beneath the surface. He hid it well in laughter and wit, but she recognized the weight behind his eyes. One night, during a citywide blackout, he knocked on her door with candles and cocoa. They talked for hours. He didn't flinch when she told him about the panic attacks, the numb days. She didn't flinch when he admitted to nights spent wide-eyed, pacing, composing in his head, but unable to lift a pen. They didn't try to fix each other. They simply listened. Winter deepened. Their worlds began to merge. Claire played again, just a few notes at first, soft and trembling. Julian, in turn, started writing again, sketching symphonies across napkins and receipts. Together they created something fragile but beautiful, a song that neither could complete alone. But healing is not a straight line. Claire relapsed in March. She vanished from him emotionally first, then physically, didn't return his calls, ignored the notes he slid under her door. Fear had wrapped itself around her chest again, whispering that she was too broken to be loved. When she finally opened her door weeks later, Julian stood there, eyes red, but voice steady. "I wrote it," he said, "the winter piece, but it's missing your part." She cried then, not from sadness, but because someone had waited. In April, they performed it together in a tiny cafe lit by fairy lights and second chances. Her bow trembled, his hand shook, but when the music began, everything else disappeared. No diagnosis, no shame, just harmony. Now, years later, Claire teaches music therapy. Julian scores, documents he wears his chaos like a badge. They still live in that 4th floor walk-up. The heater still rattles. And every winter, when the snow arrives early, they open the windows wide and let the cold in, just to remember how far they've come.
Chicago, Illinois, 2018. The snow was stubborn that January, sticking to sidewalks like a warning. Nora had just moved into a faded brick apartment above a bakery in Logan Square. Her suitcase heavier with memories than clothes. She was 29, a former architect, now piecing her life back together after 2 years of struggle with borderline personality disorder. Her days were quiet, deliberate, everything in its place. No surprises. Then came Luca. He moved into 3B the same week, dragging boxes, guitars, and a cat named Vinyl into the hallway like a storm. His laughter was loud, his joy too bright for winter. Nora hated how drawn she was to it, to him. They met officially in the laundry room. She was folding towels with military precision. He was singing to Vinyl, off-key but charming. He noticed the tremor in her hands and didn't flinch, just offered her a cookie and asked what kind of music she hated the least. That was Luca. Never too careful, always too much. He was a musician, writing jingles to pay rent and chasing bigger dreams by night. Nora told him she was between things, which wasn't a lie. She was between hope and despair. Most days, her condition made emotions feel like tidal waves, too much or not enough. But Luca never asked her to explain. He just kept showing up, knocking on her door with coffee, inviting her to rooftop talks, telling stories that made her laugh until her ribs ached. She warned him once, during a sunset the color of ash. I get overwhelmed, I self-sabotage, I disappear. Luca smiled, without pity. I have panic disorder, he said. Sometimes I can't breathe without reason. I've passed out in elevators and cried in grocery stores. We'll be a mess together. Noor fell in love in pieces. Quiet moments, loud silences, his fingers brushing hers when the world felt too sharp. He wrote a song for her, never finished it, said it had to keep growing, like her. But love isn't easy when your own mind betrays you. One night, after an argument that spun out faster than either could stop, Nora disappeared, left her phone, her keys, everything. She wandered the city for hours until the noise in her head became too loud to bear. When she returned shaking, Luca was waiting in the stairwell, still in his socks, clutching her favorite hoodie. He didn't say, "You scared me." He said, "I'm glad you came back." That's when she realized he wasn't trying to fix her. He just wanted to stay. Months passed, they created their own rhythm. Bad days came like storms, but they rode them out. Luca with grounding words, Nora with new coping tools, both learning each other's pain. She returned to sketching again, not buildings, but the life she was building, a real one, messy, flawed, but hers. On their 1-year anniversary, he finished the song, played it under fairy lights in the bakery's back alley. It wasn't perfect, but it was true. Now, years later, Nora tells this story to the patients she mentors, showing them the drawings, the music sheets, the proof that healing isn't linear, and love doesn't have to be flawless to be lasting. Every light flickering in apartment 3B is a reminder that even in winter, some